management and organizational management. And this now the competition maybe between, let's say, the expert of IT and ICT and the management people, who's gonna own AI and who's gonna be leading AI maybe in the future. Just triggered a lot of question in my brain, and this AI ethic, and if it's very computer science people, math people, or more monitoring and evaluation and management people will be leading this for the next 5 or 10 years, maybe. Yeah.
I think that you bring up this point, which I think is really important, which is the organizational impact is not yet really understood. And I'm curious how like all of your own orgs are figuring it out. And the only thing I would say from our perspective, we are very into the idea of abstraction, right? That these things should continue to get higher and higher level and more human readable. And yet, I still think view source is always important to like really know what's happening underneath and like, how do we make it so? Um, yeah. So the only thing that I will say is, I think my biases, and Dan and Tom, I'm sure you can appreciate this. I was a PM, so I tend to view the world as a PM for everything. Whether that's good or bad, and my developers disagree with me on that all the time. So ultimately, we're just trying to empower all the PMs. Like if you have enough technical knowledge to make things hurt, but you care a lot about outcomes, then I think that these are the tools for you. Okay. Welcome to session 8 of the Gooey.AI Workflow Accelerator for NGOs and government organizations supported by the Rockefeller Institution or Foundation. It is really good to have all you guys. We missed you last week. We are at this point, we are, I think, exactly at the 2/3 mark of like where we wanted to be. And so, we're gonna, Ambika's gonna try to check in on the progress with everyone. And then, we're hoping that everybody's at the level of, okay, we've got something. It's now actually ready to see, how do users feel about it? Can we actually begin to see some of the impact in terms of the KPIs that you guys specified at the beginning of this? And this is where the rubber begins to meet the road of the iteration cycles rather than just the demo cycles. And so with that, I will pass it off to my illustrious colleague, Ambika, and take it away, my friend.
I missed everyone last week, yes, definitely, and happy to see people's runs and progress. I'll just quickly run through our agenda for today, and then a quick session on some extra inputs on functions, because that's where we left off last time. So we'll just do a quick look at how you can use functions for a cron job. So maybe you want to take all your data and push it back to your own servers. You don't want to see it only on our dashboard. And then how to manage your PII with functions as well. And then Sean and I have a few interesting demos. We'll open up for Q&A. And then also look at next steps to make sure that it's not just about building your bot, but also taking it out into the world and making sure that theory of change is action. And that's really the core purpose of the accelerator. So hopefully we can kind of reach that space as well. All right. So I'll quickly do a demo for functions. I've got a bunch of docs on this, and you can also kind of look at it in more depth when you have time. I'll just share links as well. So why we kind of figured this might be useful, maybe you have a dashboard running here, but you want to take it back to your business intel BI servers. Sean, is that the right word for it? And that requires you to kind of look at it in a larger perspective of your other parts of your work. So we just quickly go to Copilot, got some new fresh updates to the UI. All right, let me take you to, let's take it to Nurse Julie. Where we've got this integration running on WhatsApp. And then if we head over to the analytics, We all know that it kind of gives you the data, but of course here we haven't run this bot for a really long time. So I'll just do show all. And it'll give me all this data related to the bot. And what I want now is that every now and again, it's able to push all of this to, say, certain server that I have, which is accessible through a secrets API key. So what it basically does is it takes this variable of messages export URL. So basically, it takes data from this tab, which is your messages tab, and pushes it all across to wherever you need to. And it's super simple. You just kind of switch it on, and you can have your own function for this. This is a very generic function, which is just going like posting to HTTP bin, but this could go to your Firebase or your Superbase or whatever else you're using. So I'll just copy this and add it here. And save it. So this will do this every day. I think there's a fixed time we do it from the backend, but if you just want to run it immediately for one time, you can also just hit run now, and it'll push the data for you, which can be seen here. So whatever was the information, it's kind of pushed it across to this. I mean, this is an empty kind of HTTP bin is empty, but if you need to push it anyway. So this like just an extension of using functions, but instead of using it in the Copilot directly, we are using it in the analysis script basically. So
And
that's, sorry, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
give a little additional context. Like for many folks, you want to know, like we work, for example, with telcos, right? And the telcos want to know, like, what are all of the messages that every single person is sending in? And we'd like that to go back to our own BI server. But we actually are uncomfortable knowing the telephone numbers of those people. And so the reason that this is available as a function is then you can do things like say, hey, I want to hash all of those telephone numbers to anonymize them because I don't want to I want to sort of pre-process that data before it goes anywhere else just from a safety perspective. Or I need to basically push this to an authenticated server, and hence I need to use a secret, which is stored in your vault, which is encrypted with just your workspace. And so this is a little geekier, but it allows this flexibility that then allows you to basically take every message plus the analysis script that ran with that message and the kind of output JSON object and take all of that and then push it to any other BI server that exists in the world. And so this is just really handy for your own data logging pieces and the kind of and you can lean into us if you want to kind of do all of the pre-processing and do all of the PII scraping before it goes over to your own servers. So we just wanted you guys to know that as a capability and functionality. And I know Ambika we obviously, there's depth in terms of like, how do you do all those things? But those examples exist there. But we just wanted you guys to know that that exists. Because I think, Angela, you brought this up for auditing, for logging, right? Like all of you guys, especially anybody on the government side, is going to have requirements around this, where you're probably going to need to replicate that interaction of data into your own servers and kind of own approved IT systems. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. Ambika, anything to add there?
No, I think that's about it. The exact time of the push, I don't recall. Maybe if someone is really specific about that, I can ask the engineering team and get back to you on, because it may need to be suited to your time zones or whatever. Then the other quick thing on functions, I'll just open this again. Is the ability to just very simply like hash phone numbers. So currently we are also working that they're hashed within the dashboard here, because say, okay, this is a web WhatsApp, but if there's like a WhatsApp bot which has an integration, currently all those numbers from the users come up in the analytics. So this may be particularly those working with health, you may want those numbers to be hashed out. So we've got a very simple library which kind of we found online, and it just basically hashes the number. So when you put in a variable for your phone number, it makes it a hash, and then it can kind of call based on that hash as well. So in our last session, when we were looking at Firebase, we did use crypto hash in that example. I don't know if any of you kind of dug a little bit deeper into this. So if you notice here, the phone number gets hashed before it is sent over to the Firebase database. So simple like format, useful, particularly those who care more about PII, which I think most people in Impact do. And the examples are all available. There's a simple one which is only crypto hash, which is here. You can just search for it. And then if you want to see the one where we've kind of integrated it into another, like a Firebase or whatever, which is this one. So useful for anyone who's looking to figure out privacy related stuff. Sean, you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, and then I guess the only other, if you return back to the function calling piece, the other major addition that happened in the last 2 weeks is you'll notice at the top it now says language. And so we now support basically the ability to run JavaScript, but we also support the ability to run any Python that's available there too. And so this is quite a powerful thing because it means that any Python code can be run, but the advantage on the Python side is if you switch to that one, Ambika, if you just
I'll
change.
just
Yeah,
find an example for that. Okay, just
yeah, you
sorry,
can
I'll
just
just
go
stop
to the
here.
one that you're on. But in
Oh,
particular, you can install other client libraries when you're running that, which you couldn't do earlier with JSON. So you basically just have a requirements.txt. So if you've got other libraries that you'd like to pull from any other, kind of like Python-based Git like resource, you can incorporate those into the little code snippets that you set. And so that's suddenly gets very powerful. So in short, this allows you guys to really run any code but also any other code library, right, that any of your functions can call. And so this is a little abstract, but the reason that this came up was actually a request that came from the Open Up folks, which is they wanted to basically, you guys have, I think, thousands or 30, 40,000 endpoints of curriculum that are behind a firewall. And so, we spent the last few weeks sort of figuring out what is the right sort of technical strategy to go ahead and allow access to those. So the goal here was we want to suck up all of those documents, use the vector database that Gooey has to basically allow search queries, which is very fast and kind of hosted and does conceptual analysis as well, to basically return the right curriculum content, but then give the teacher a link that is behind an authentication wall. So we want to index everything that's over there, but that's not a public URL, it's a private URL. And so the question was how to do that. And so the solution that we ultimately came up with was, hey, every time your knowledge base is getting refreshed, these guys now own a little code snippet that basically does the authentication and does the login to basically get the authentication token to log in to their site. And then it basically goes and curates and gets back all of the HTML content for each one of those, and then passes that HTML content to our document search thing, which basically looks at that and then can create and basically analyze with LLM prompts additional facts associated with that and puts all of that into a big vector database. And then all of that is then made available to your bot. So this is sort of a very general fix to a very specific problem. But I just wanted to, for the kind of geeks in the room, we now have the ability to write any Python code. Not only to you guys can write and control any Python code, but also any requirements around that. And you can do that at sort of, compile time, if you will, to update your knowledge base. And you can also do that at kind of runtime. But that was just like one example of stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks, which again, for, like Rob, I'm looking at you, or for any authenticated kind of CMS sources, this is a good strategy, right? That if you wanted the bot to know about, say, every page that the internal City of Seattle system goes ahead and creates, even the ones behind an authentication wall, this is a way to make that happen, if you wanted to. So,
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
sure.
Right. I think, Sean, it's demo demo time.
Yeah, so just the LaTeX one was the last one that we wanted to kind of. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I did have one note.
Yeah.
It seems like so one of the things that I've gotten out of these function demos is like pretty much. I mean, the platform is built out and is easy to add functionality to basically support anything we might want to do with along the chain of workflow. And but I think the part that we haven't really gone into as a group is like, how do we, what are some sort of common recipes for, okay, you've got this bot working. Here are some things you might want to do with it. Like, here are some, and certainly City of Seattle has probably like record keeping requirements. And I'm sure some, IOM probably has similar record keeping requirements. And so and our org has, we're not dealing with student data, but just in case, like if a teacher asks a question about a student, we have to figure out, we have to make sure that we're not like accidentally storing that in a place that it can be shared with people. So I think the product management side of it, like really thinking through, it's great that we don't have to think about the technical implementation quite as much. That's really great. But I think one of the things that arises naturally out of trying to do it yourself is you end up defining like, oh, here's all the things we have to think about. And when it's this easy, we don't prompt Tom to try to figure out, hey, what are all the, step, what are the like archival things we need to think about? What are the backups? What are the, what's the sort of feedback loop like in terms of, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit, the metrics, but so I think that's an interesting thing to like kind of zoom out and say, what's the like the overall workflow? What's the like, before they get here, and then after the chats exist for a while, like then what are all the places where it needs to connect? And I don't expect that GUI would provide all of that stuff, but I think it's definitely worth like taking a beat and zooming out and saying like, oh, right, like if we have a flow chart, what are the things that we need to think about? What are the things that we need to like want to do with this stuff once we have the chat data, or once we have the requests. So
well, the only thing I would say is you guys are very much encouraged and at least obligated for one of them to basically share the workflows that you have with the rest of your field and industry, and say these were the types of problems that we ran into that we think other people in the education or the government or the healthcare domain we think are also going to run into, and here's the specific example that we have. And so that's on each one of your respective, little GUI pages, right? Which is, I think there's a Gooey.AI/open up resources, and that has your public versions of that. And so the idea is that those were very much intended to be little assets to say, here's the little snippet, right, that we did that worked for us that's solving that problem. And then my take is those have to be somewhat segmented, because you can't have like the one workflow that does everything on Earth, right? And so you're going to have different little chunks to basically try to make that work. So you're absolutely encouraged to anything you think is useful that you want to turn into that identity piece of like, please push that out and turn on that little checkbox that says publish.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about the way you have it structured is that we can, if we do think of it of sort of a pipeline and a recipe of things connected together, then we can, rather than like a monolithic sort of this is our LLM
Yeah.
chatbot, then that allows us to show the outline of what we're doing without necessarily exposing the inner workings.
Yes.
And so I think
Yes, absolutely.
that's the way we, on our side, we need to start thinking about it that way. Like, not just how can we make this work, but how can we make this work and demonstrate the steps required, and also like have it decoupled enough that we can experiment with swapping certain things in and out.
Yes. Yes. Any other responses to that? I'm kind of curious. Like, I suppose, Rob Lloyd, in your work of how do cities share best practices, I'm curious, like, is there lessons that we can take there that may be relevant?
I think that there's kind of two levels, and one of the things that Sean and Steve and Ambika that we're discerning here is there's a very product-centric angle in government, right? Is you buy and partner with someone and you kind of deploy it and you tell that story. And then there's the approach of how do we build it ourselves and kind of put things together and how flexible can we be and how do we share those lessons? And that's how we kind of took the approach of creating the Gov.AI coalition. And then that's the playbook type approach that we're trying to create here. And that's part of our proposal to you is how can we see the pieces and create the playbook where we have some more flexibility because we see AI more at the front end of its technical journey than the regimented like products are baked and mature and the vendor community is more static and fewer in nature and we see ourselves more the front than the back. There's more small than IBM's and Microsoft's and Salesforce's. So what we're trying to discern here is how do we give ourselves more playbooks, flexibility, and see can we do that at scale and share with others and give ourselves things where we can kind of do by consortium and collaboratives. And if we can, how do we publish them and take almost like a GitHub approach, a shared GitHub approach, and where would we put that? And beyond telling the story, what is that resource that we would publish, and how would you manage that type of resource? So those are some of the questions we're asking ourselves. I'm not sure if that quite answered your question, but that's as best as we've got.
Yeah, my only small comment on that is, I do think there's some emerging standards that I think you'll definitely see us support, which are like, how do you take this artifact, which has a little bit of prompts and a little bit of your golden evaluation data and a bit of your sort of connections, and package that into like the
Yep.
JSON schema that you can then take to like Power Apps or Claude or any other builder as this sort of abstracted thing that is
Yep.
kind of vendor agnostic. So I'd be happy to have that conversation, and that's something we've been thinking about a little bit. If you go to Gooey.AI/standards, there's kind of early thoughts on like what that might be and why we think the industry needs such a thing.
Well, and this might be to Dan's point is it's so flexible. Where do you start and where do you kind of pin a couple foundational steps? Like where do you put your legs
Yeah.
and then where do you go from there? But maybe I'm misstating Dan's points, but again, that's as good as I've got. So I'm sticking with my story.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. And one of the like artifacts that I imagine also coming out of this, I think like having a JSON file that you can plug in is also good, but also, and this is probably something that's really easy for AI to generate, but like a literal like picture of the flow, right?
Yeah.
Like a place where you can say, this is what it looks like, and then this is what happens. Here are all the pieces that sort of feed into the prompt improvement. And I think those, a lot of people are visual learners and they can be like, oh, I see what you're doing there. And that's kind of how I'm thinking about it in terms of what we'd share with other education providers or material providers. Like, this is what you
And if
need
I
to
can
consider.
If I can double down on what you're saying, Dan, is that's always been one of the keys, right? Is when you can abstract the complexity. And how can, right now we're in the learn mode, and this is really powerful and so simple. But as soon as you can abstract that complexity where someone can learn the journey very quickly, not just the technology, then people can really apply that stuff quickly to their problems. And we can see the technology more clearly with what you've given us at GUI. But if you can go from GUI to Gov, maybe we just coined a term there, GUI Gov, but the leap that we have to make is some kind of platform where you say, all right, I see it and I can very quickly then apply it towards a problem. And that's the leap we're still trying to make.
Yeah, the only small thing I would add is we are working I feel like your request to say, I'm looking at something over here, I want to make it work for this other domain, also seems like the sort of thing you should be able to ask AI to just do for you,
Yeah.
right? And so know that that's coming too, right?
Yeah. The printing press moment.
The what's that?
So the concept is the printing press is, once upon a time, only 3% of the population could read and write. And then all of a sudden, a lot more of the population could read and write. But AI is one of those things where you can say, I have an idea, can you make it for me? And it could be that moment where you're like, I don't need to code. Make this do this.
Yeah. Or more specifically, here's the thing that the city of Seattle did, and I'm the city of San Jose. Please go find all of the documents, search their site, make the vector database, deploy on WhatsApp, and make it so. And so just know that we are very much thinking about those scenarios and like, how do we actualize them? I don't think I think you'll see the very first demos of that toward the end of this accelerator, but you'll see it as it gets improved. Because like we've just noticed over and over again, like you have to be a pretty good prompt writer right now to really optimize this stuff. And and I think you've seen sort of the hints of it. Or like, well, we can just have the LLMs do that for you, right? And so the question is like, how do we enable more and more of that? With still the ability to kind of look underneath the hood of what happened. But to your point, Rob, yeah, I mean, we've thought a little bit less on like the how do we visualize what's happening, which I think is really important too. But it's kind of like, what is the vibe coding equivalent of, altering somebody else's workflow? And so, and I do think there's some UI standards and like patterns that are opening up there. So you'll see that in the coming weeks and months.
Additionally, that is, I think what everybody's getting at is one of the initiatives of the Rockefeller grant, which is how do we make each one of you create something that then everybody in tangential or similar sectors can then take and put to use very efficiently in their own practice. And so that is exactly what Rockefeller is hoping to get out of this, is that we can take the work that each one of you are doing and make it easy for anybody else to do. Sort of follow in your wake.
Yes, exactly. Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out on a related note that there should probably also be some stronger guidance around privacy and security related concerns as it relates to how these things integrate with other systems. You've got the shared secrets vault, which is private, and there are a number of things within the GUI UI that are not published per se, but are still publicly visible. And I ran into this earlier this week when I was trying to add a private GitHub repository as a dependency to a Python project. And so I was going through the conventions, which includes using a personal access token for GitHub. Well, that's going into the requirements.txt file because it can't be in the secrets, and that is public. insofar as everything, even the things that are not explicitly public, are public.
Yeah, so one thing that is coming quite quickly on that front is so for anybody that's in an enterprise workspace, which you guys are all in, we will lock it down such that anything that's not right now, this is, is it mostly from right now, if you make a run and you share that run, anybody that has that URL, which is basically an obscure GUID, can see that run. And so you will see in the coming weeks that if you're in an enterprise workspace, that the only people that are allowed to see that run are members of that workspace. And so this will basically put a much higher walled garden on everything else that you have around you. I would love to do, and I think we should do for next week, like all of the PII and security concern audit pieces. This is, a constant process of hardening, and we want to do more. Like the other thing, Peter, that, we've also thought about is we also need to detect things like if people are putting secrets where they shouldn't be inside their code or inside their prompts, they probably need to be warned at least that this is might be a bad idea, right? So they don't kind of accidentally leak any of those things too. And so, anyways, I think I'm trying to think of the right way to do this. We'll probably start a little maybe Google Doc to just say like, hey, what are any of the privacy concerns that you guys have had or the issues that you kind of see? And then, like anything else, stack them all up, prioritize them, and try to knock them out.
Yeah.
And then maybe
it just ended up being a surprise to me that things that were not published, things that were parts of the internal parts of the workflow, were in fact accessible without authentication, which raises a whole other set of concerns.
Yeah. So as you'll see, that's changing shortly.
Yep. Great.
We acknowledge that that is an issue and are fixing it. There are definitely some scenarios that it makes harder, but there's other scenarios that it makes more secure, which is obviously important. So, kind of not unlike a non-public Google Doc, people will see a thing that says you need access to this. Please ask the admin to, add you to this workspace in order to see anything that's inside of here. And that will also be retroactively applied, Peter. So for any existing URLs that you have, then it's going to be applied against that.
Yeah, from the security perspective, we'll want to change out everything once that is in place. It's not enough to just let it retroactively apply, but I appreciate the.
I mean, there's a kind of technically you're right, but I don't think we have such a big surface area that somebody's gonna sneak in there and steal our stuff in that window.
Yeah, but it does mean right now, if you had a bad actor inside of your own organization, right, there's the potential to leak, right? And so, we
But
we
it's
have
not just within our own organization. That's the problem. It's literally
if you log
anybody
out,
that,
you can get to it.
yes. It's anybody who has a link to the GUI project that we have published has all of the things that refers to and can transiently work their way back through all of our internal dependencies, including seeing how we are scraping the website, including getting access to the private GitHub repo. These are
So
ultimately
look at
for
how
our business case, it's not super relevant. We don't host anything that is super personally identifying or secure at this time, but it's really it's put me in a place that's feeling kind of uncomfortable.
So yeah, I'm happy to go deeper on that. Clearly, there are things if you put it in a recipe that's a function or a workflow that's a function, and there's private things in that function, and then that's published that has the ability to spread out. So we should anyways, let's just go deeper on that one. And then just make sure that, and we can report back of like, hey, here's everybody the threats that we saw, and this is how we plan to address them. Because these come up in any project where you have on the web collaborative features with other people. And so, as I said, we want to continue to please tell us of any of the other vectors that you see, and then, we have to knock them out and harden. So, and Peter, you're at a little bit of the edge of some new functionality, and so there's always this sort of piece back and forth of, as we enable new functionality, there's going to be new security risks that you then have to think through. So, Ambika, I think you had a couple more items in your agenda, and then I appreciate
Yeah,
the willing conversation here today too.
no, this was very useful. I think it allows everyone to kind of talk openly and give us some feedback. So there were a few things, so Sean, maybe we can cut back on one or two of them based on the time. One, we wanted to show them function calling without the HTML tag things, and then the latex stuff, and then finally how we did the auth enable for open up through the functions.
Yeah, that one I feel like
Which
we've sort of covered, but I would show off just the LaTeX support. Just so you
Yeah.
guys know, we now have the ability to show fractions and math problems and tables well, which is just kind of fun. And so, those things end up showing up. So yeah,
Right.
go ahead, Ambika.
So this is just a base example that Anish quickly made up I think yesterday, where you can kind of now have LaTeX support. I did try to run it on the open up resources, but I think maybe it needs a bit of prompt engineering. And also, like when I asked specifically just for Euler formula, it didn't give it to me because obviously now we are running things on the knowledge base. So maybe if you have a more relevant question, SMEs from Open Up team, we could ask that and it would give us a better looking formatted latex, which kind of looks like this. So easy to understand, easy to kind of communicate within your teaching cohort. And also now we have better looking tables. So I just did a very basic example. I shudder at fraction math. It's like my biggest kryptonite. So I just asked it, okay, give me a bunch of true or false statements and make it into a table. And I think now we have a very nice, neat looking table, which is fairly usable with, I think, just a couple of things we need to fix, but much better than earlier where it was just a bit awry. You can play around with this a little bit more if you have any questions. I think it will become a bit more relevant when an SME can give me a bunch of questions and I can share that. If you want to share something specific to grade 6 to 8, I don't know who's here on the open up team.
And just really quick, can you explain the phrase "don't put LaTeX in code"? What is that telling?
I think right now this is just like counteracting like it trying to pull it into a function, into I think the developer function, but I'll just check with Anish also, but he said that it needs a bit of prompt work and he found that it was trying to make it into a either it pulls it into function or it makes it into a code block.
Got
which
it.
he didn't want. So probably just that, yeah.
Got it. So he's talking about code formatting.
Code block.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
The other sort of big demo for the week is it took a little while longer just to figure out this sort of call transfer stuff. So there were several different approaches, but we think we found one that works reliably. And so, I mean, it essentially does what you expect it to. So you can now call up the City of Seattle bots and ask for the animal shelter, and it'll now transfer you appropriately and say the right thing and not, speak a little bit of HTML, which it was earlier. And so I would encourage anybody from the City of Seattle and anybody else here to hammer on this bot. In greater depth, it's now pretty good at basically going and transferring you to any of the city departments based on whichever one you ask for in any language. So yeah, so excuse our patience with that a little bit back and forth of just getting that to work reliably was a little harder than we thought it would be.
Well, awesome. Thanks for that, Sean. And apologies for getting in there and breaking it. And thank you for fixing it.
Yeah, no, we
good,
are
good
trying
intro.
to watch everybody to make sure that like you guys aren't regressing accidentally.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's awesome.
you want to
So,
remain it. You want everyone to be up.
like in the future, so in that case, like, do we have insight to, the only indication that I really had that I broke it by changing the language model was the fact that it was not recognizing, the speech to text or text to speech. And is there a way that one would sort of look at the operation side of that to know that it broke, or how does
So
that work?
in normal cases, you usually just you make a change and then you rerun your golden evaluation to ensure that against your own data set, you're not having a set of regressions. The voice test harness is a little more difficult, right? Because you can't do that with text. You sort of have to simulate all of the API calls to Twilio or whatever voice provider you're going ahead and using. And so let me get back to you on the
Mm,
what is the sort of regression testing specifically for voice, right? That we can go ahead and use to make sure that, hey, we're not making breaking changes rather without doing kind of manual
yeah,
testing. It's
cool.
just it's a little more complex in the voice space,
Got it.
right? Because you have to
Yeah,
sort of simulate telephone calls really to do it well, whereas everybody else can kind of just do it at the like, okay, is the API still up and running and doing everything it wanted to do? So
cool.
you're in
Good
a little
info.
bit of a
Thank you.
special case because you're voice based that we have to go and look a little hard at. Um, but I will say it's quite nice in terms of, we also enabled the SMS kind of follow-ups. So you get a call, it will then summarize the call, give you the information you wanted, and then allow you to kind of ask another question via SMS or telephone. So which felt like a natural extension of what somebody would want, right? That if you give me an SMS, I should be able to text you back and say, like if you give me the numbers from the mayor's office and you say, here's the telephone number, and you say, what's his address, you should be able to get the office address too. So that's in there.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And especially the reason that we intervened there as much as we did is because we were adding the functionality of the transfer, right? And so it's going to change a little bit. So that should now be settled. And, we will want to encourage you guys to continue to do all the fishing and the iteration.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Just Sean, shall we go into the KPI piece, if that's okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, so I think in the beginning we did a session on KPIs, but as I think we've all worked on our copilots now and things are getting clearer, there's a chance for us to kind of iterate and make this a bit better. But the core idea for us is that how can the KPI piece sorry about this in the back, how can the KPI piece work well with you in context of all the analytic tools that we have, and how can you use it for your theory of change improvements? So not everyone has been testing as well as in like out there in the world. A lot of stuff is happening in context of like fixing and building and trying different prototypes. So I just thought I'll take two, three examples that I thought where things were moving a little bit further. So, for example, here we've got the Seymour bot, which is a voice bot, and we've got a few analytic pieces going here in context of which department is being called, were they answered, what are the funnels. And if you go back to your KPI docs here, you do have a few questions around this, which still maybe you want to define a bit more. But I think for us, the idea is that these core questions get a like valid and numbered, measured improvement that can be kind of reflected here in the analysis script. Sean, have I got that right? Do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, just that, each of you came into this with like, hey, here's the outcomes that we'd like to see for our beneficiaries and the people that we're all serving. And we're getting to the point where we want to make sure that the analysis dashboards and the data that we're getting back is actually beginning to reflect that. And so if I think about the city of Seattle case, our questions being answered, and then, this percentage true false and being able, I think, over time, see that week on week and to see, is that improving? What's the usage around it? Are people able to, basically connect into the right things? We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure, dashboards, reporting in place to be able to answer these kind of fundamental questions. And so we're just sort of highlighting that and, are absolutely willing to continue to help you guys make sure that you can answer that question to your own bosses and your own justification of, hey, is this an area worth continuing to work in? Is it actually helping us achieve the goals that we've got? So I think that's we're just sort of calling out that as we sort of go into the last third, analysis and kind of and then getting to these core pieces of it, like, is it working, is something that we all need to collectively answer, and we're here to help.
So yeah, so our hope is now that I think we've kind of covered most of the things in terms of building and managing a bot, to now be able to do a weekly assessment with you guys on what's working, what's not, and taking forward this idea of the KPI and theory of change and making sure that it's all going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think that starts from next Thursday. So maybe we'll give you a little bit of a structure in the coming few days on how we can plan out the next few weekly meetings.
And obviously, I would just say to Peter's point, if there are kind of, regulatory or compliance blockers that are getting in the way of the sort of pilots to the first 100 users, i.e., privacy things, please escalate those, and then we'll try to make sure that we can get to the point where every org has comfort level that at least for the first 100 real people, right, that we're comfortable with these things going out. So with that, any other questions? We also did want to leave sort of 10 minutes because, you've got time, and if you've got a question, I'm sure somebody else has one too. Shavi?
I had one which was about, I brought this up a couple weeks ago in WhatsApp, and I'm curious. This is about sort of background knowledge. So like potentially using a separate doc search or something like that for sort of context that should influence responses but shouldn't specifically be cited. So in our case, things like the I don't know the what is it called, the UDL, Universal Design for Learning, which is not specifically in our knowledge base. It's not in our curriculum, but it is really relevant to the sorts of responses. And Amika, you're right that like the chatbot already knows about that specific one, but there may be some other ones that aren't part of the LLM overall awareness that we'd like to make sure are. I mean, another one is like there's sort of social justice related things where it's like we want to make sure that the responses are in sync with sort of what we consider to be culturally responsive and inclusive. And so, we don't necessarily want to specifically refer to a web page that says this is how you should do it, but we do want that to influence the response. I'm not totally clear on the best way to do that, so I figured I'd bring it up when we have a chance.
So in general, the usual pattern is start with the golden Q&A, right? Like examples that are definite, that you consider to be great and ideal, are usually the best way to kind of start with this problem. So, if you can formulate 10 hypothetical questions and ideal answers that basically reflect this, kind of subtle bias that you're trying to introduce, right? That's a good place to start. And then that allows, as you or the bot or the changes or the model differences all happen, then you can judge like, okay, am I getting closer to these ideal answers? And then I feel like it's this, like a lot of that stuff goes into the system prompt, right? Is the sort of like obvious way to say, hey, you're a bot that's well trained in the following domains, right? And then other techniques are you can few shot it, so you can give some of those examples in the system prompt itself, right? And saying like this would be a good answer. In the role definition, if you go deep on the perspective that your bot should have and the types of training, remember all an LLM is somebody who's continuing a story, right? And so if you really well define the character, literally, of your bot and their training and their background and their biases and the stuff that they went through and the class, like all of that will then come out in the story that essentially it's writing between the conversations between your bot and that user. So this would be the take that I would do on it, right? So if you literally imagine the character that and what was their educational background, what did they study, what was their biases, and you define all of that, that I think will be a fruitful outcome. Like it goes back to like the early cultural stuff that we did with Radbots. We did exactly this, and it worked remarkably well in terms of
Cool.
articulating different political perspectives, even.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think, and it sounds like maybe one of the things that we need to consider is like, we've got our golden questions, which are like, some of those are sort of easy wins.
Yeah.
And then we can say like, okay, let's make it a little more challenging and not necessarily go down the road of red teaming, but basically thinking of some of these edge cases where we want to make sure that you get the best possible response, and then it's informed by all this background information. Make sure we pick a set of those questions that really do touch on that stuff and are a little bit thornier maybe, or a little bit more advanced than just I need 5 practice problems.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, try that and then, share it back to the group and we can collectively beat it up. Shadi, to your question, and this comes up a lot. And so one, the error obviously shouldn't happen. We can kind of dive a little deeper in that. The Actually, the thing that would be helpful, Shadi, is always share the run URLs. For as long as, well, for right now, those will get shut down if you guys are not in each other's workspaces. But for right now, you can basically show that out. But the one thing that, that each of you has to sort of struggle with, which is you have a knowledge base, and then, each organization has different tolerances for, and what do we do if the user asks something that's outside of the knowledge base? Do we lean into what the LLM may hallucinate and thinks it knows about the world, which, for subject areas that are like conceptual, maybe okay. But in the case of giving authoritative information from a city or government really isn't okay. And then Shadi, in your situation, I feel like you should ask the question of if they really need a nearby hospital, do you also want to look at Google data and specifically Google Maps data as another authoritative source of the reality of the locations of things in the world? And if that's true, then you can enable a function, right, that will restrict to say, hey, I don't want to just search the internet about everything, but if they're asking for a nearby health clinic, please go ahead and do this search, get back those results and render them. And so, we can have a session to show you how to make that happen. Sorry, your audio is a little off, Shadi. Yeah, we still can't hear you.
Okay, awesome. So in
Yeah,
1
no,
minute,
we got you now.
just to explain to you the difference between the CSV file I provided you and let's say like public location, public GPS points available already on Google Maps that are also important, because the 2000 Google Maps, 2000 coordinates I provided you are not available online. Those are for primary healthcare. We insisted to align with the government and to let's say the public health policies within the country, that the first liners, like the first aid or as a chatbot, not just providing information and navigating health services. It's very important to, as a first answer, to provide them primary health care. But at
Got it.
some point, they're asking for ER or for like tertiary, big hospital within a capital city, which is, like they said, the most case scenario. We need them to, because those locations already exist on Google Maps. So it's
Yeah.
important that the LLM can provide them those big hospitals that are existing already on Google Maps. Actually, the error happening, but I figured out for me also when it happened, it provided me the answer. Just an error
Yeah,
message.
but this
and
error,
later
this
on,
is a bug that you're seeing that's on our side. That thing, like no one should ever see that. So there's some issue that's there.
Mhm.
So we can dig into that. Ambika, if you could also share your calendar thing, we should just do a short session, Shadi, and we can figure out what's going on there.
Sure, it's not a big thing within the like
No,
the
no, but
overall.
that is a bug, right? That shouldn't be
Yeah,
coming through. There's something
yeah,
amiss there.
yeah, cool. Just to clarify, sorry, it's 6 already. Thank you, everyone.
I can stay if yeah, I've got another 15 minutes if anybody wants to stick around. I realize if other people need to go. Thank you, everyone, and you know, we look forward to more progress. And we're available, and we'd love to see this thing going forward.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks, Sean, for all your support.
Sure, no problem.
Sean, can I meet you a little bit
Thanks,
after
everyone.
dinner?
Sure, I'm happy to hang out here, Shadi, if you want to dive a little deeper. And then, yeah, I'm here.
Actually, just one more question.
Huh.
I'm really happy the fact that there are more LLMs now that can understand, they said, local languages within the African continent.
Yes.
And I don't know if this, I'm just thinking with you, if this will help having this, like the city of Seattle and having a voice robot, you know, talking. And did we achieve the level that a local language can be understood and the whole process will be over like a voice call, or it's not up to that level that we can think about developing this?
You can, I mean, let's put it this way. The ability to spin up basically the voice version of what you have against the GPT-4o APIs, which support the top 40, 50 languages pretty well. That's quite straightforward. Uh, if we want to support all of the other kind of like minor models, which I put like 11 labs into, and that kind of additional one that I was talking about, the problem is those don't necessarily work in real time, right? They're a little slower. And so they work really well for these like WhatsApp style voice notes that go back and forth. They work less well right now for the voice pieces. We have some thoughts of how to make that work well. It just won't be quite as seamless as the piece. It'll like you'll say, hey, like you just have to imagine it of in the city of Seattle case, literally you can just start talking, right? And it'll just start answering. Whereas if we want to support every single language model, it'll be slightly more structured. Like you'll come in and there'll be one that says, hello, please say your language. And we'll try to say that thing in as many languages as we can. But,
Yeah.
you know, they will say something to the effect of, I speak Chichewa, probably in Chichewa. And then we have to sort of dynamically switch which model then we're going to use for the rest of that conversation and kind of go back and forth. And so I would say that would be a good follow-up, and I think we can get there. I just don't think we can get there in the next 4 weeks. That's all.
Okay, it makes sense.
I think I
Or
would
just
start with, I mean, the two that I would say is I think I would start with the current WhatsApp piece that you have, and then just see for the top 40 languages how well does it work. And so, you know, for like French and English and Arabic, it'll probably be pretty good. right?
Exactly. Let's do French, English, and Arabic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so and then it's basically using all of the same stuff that you've got. Um,
Mhm.
and so I would be so we can basically show you how to spin that up.
Okay.
The
Cool.
the other thing the other thing is we will have to think about we might have to do some work to find a local Tunisian provider and then integrate that. Would be other one. So like it's really easy to spin up a +1 number, which would be an international telephone call. It will be a little bit more difficult because we'd have to find like a local Tunisian telephone provider that then hooks into all of these things. And so I
Yeah.
don't know the landscape there. And so that would be my only caveat. But from a standpoint of is this worthwhile? Can people use it and do a usability test? We can get you there, but it'll just be a +1 number on English, Arabic, and French.
Cool. Cool. I will exploit this and check with maybe a service provider if this is. I don't know what are the requirements. Maybe there is a list or there's some
Uh,
technicalities within American +1 phone
I mean,
providers.
we know, like, actually, I'd be curious. So, like, we've actually done a little bit with these guys. Africa's Talking. Do you know if they're in Tunis or in Tunisia?
No, in Tunisia, there is three service providers. There is the Orange, it's a French company. And there is Oredo, which is an international, also multinational company. I think it's every in many countries in Africa as well. And there is the national Tunisia Telecom.
Mm. And
Yeah,
then
but those
I'm
rank.
curious, like in Tunisia, if somebody wants to make like a call to, Algeria, right? Is there an exorbitant fee for such international calls, or are those generally pretty cheap?
It depends of the plan you get, if it's an international plan, if it's a Europe plan, if it's an Africa country plans, it depends,
I mean, the
So,
other thing that we actually do support already is we support a missed call infrastructure where they basically make a call and hang up immediately, and then the system calls them back. And so
oh,
that has the effect of it doesn't cost the user anything. It costs you guys a little more. Um,
yeah.
but but that's another alternative.
I would try to get a phone number and we can use it for trial, What do you think?
It's the problem is it's a little more complicated than WhatsApp. Like we really have to find like a service provider. Like in the States, we use Twilio. And so, if you
Mhm.
go in and I'll give you a sense of like how this kind of plays out. So if you look at like Twilio, I'll just literally use ChatGPT for this. Like what's Twilio's per minute pricing for phone calls in the US versus Tunisia? Excuse me, Tunisia. Um, and so you'll just see that the cost difference is usually here. So it's like 1.5 cents a minute, and less than a penny, about a penny per inbound call. And then you can see like
$1
it's $1
per
a
call.
minute over here, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why you really want to find a
Yeah.
better provider. And I was like,
Yeah.
what providers give to API telephony access in Tunisia? And
Hmm.
so, yeah,
Yeah. These are not Tunisian.
yeah,
No.
they're probably not.
No. 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 No.
Uh,
It's completely confused. No. None of
yeah,
these
it's
are.
very confused. And so, anyways, there would be just some work to research that. That generally ends up being the issue. So, like again, we've found that these guys, Africa's Talking, are pretty good. But I think they're based. I want to say they're based in Nigeria or South Africa. I forget which one.
Okay.
Um, and they have a pretty solid API. But I don't think they support all the countries. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly like Kenya based. Oh,
Yeah.
here we go. So actually, it's not bad. Check this out. So they have, I'm just curious. So like these are all, yeah, to get, so like what is the closest? Like we can get up to like Mali, which is pretty close, right? But like it seems like they support everybody but Tunisia. So like in
Yeah, these are all,
Mali,
yeah, West Africa.
yeah. So anyways,
Let me
that will
search
be
this
the
here.
issue. And
I
so
will
that's
give it a try.
yeah.
I will search it, and if there is anything to explore, I will get back to you.
Yeah, and there is some lift there because like we have to support that new provider and their APIs, and so
Mhm.
as I said, I think getting you guys to the point where like you have a US based telephone number that people can give a missed call to, I think yeah, that should basically kick that off. It works there. We can start there and then see if it's usable.
Sure, sure.
The nice part is it does have SMS, right? And so then you can kind of
Mhm.
do this follow-up via SMS thing too.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I would keep trying. And then can you show me, just before we hop off, can you just show me that bug that you saw? I just want to see if I can find the
Oh,
particular
I
thing.
shared it already on the chat.
Oh, and I
Just
wanted to say I'm actually going to Europe and the UK in the coming weeks, and I just wanted to see
Mhm.
if you're getting a chance to be around. So I'll be in London from July
Oh,
7th
cool.
to the 17th, and then I'm going to Geneva for this AI for Good Summit from the 8th to the 11th. And I was just wondering if you happen to be in the neighborhood.
No, no, I don't
Okay.
have any plans to go to Europe.
Yeah. And is there anybody else that you think would be worthwhile for us to meet inside the org in either of these two places?
Um, if you, yeah, in Geneva, like, for give me your like your timeline in Geneva.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty short. It's just the 8th through the 11th, but I'll send you a mail on this.
Okay, 8th through the 11th. I will say
Yes.
Geneva. I'll see if anyone from, because the HQ is in Geneva, by the way.
Okay.
IOM HQ in Geneva, and by any chance, if there is anybody from, I have a friend who's working with the department's called IAM, Information Management.
Uh-huh.
And then basically this information management colleagues are not those ICT guys, who's only on Azure and very technical
Yeah.
people. Information management are those who are in between, between management and, let's say, data collection tool, dissemination tool, communication tool, and ICT. That's
Okay.
why I will try to reach out to him. His name is
Okay.
Mitch, and maybe he's from the US, by the way, and maybe he's a cool guy. Maybe he has time to say hi and discover more. I already talked to him about this
Okay.
chatbot, and yeah, I will keep you posted. Yes, I will update you about this.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Can you just like you just took that screenshot? Could you show me that screenshot of like
Oh,
where?
cool. One second. Let me share my screen. Okay.
But I'll send you a mail on that, and then but yeah, I
Okay.
would love the intro.
I'm used to Teams. Sorry, I get lost. um.
There's a big green button that should say share at the bottom.
Oh, okay, got it. See. Okay. One second. Um, hmm.
I'm only
Um,
seeing PowerPoint right now, just you know.
taking forever. Oh, sorry.
I think you might have shared the wrong screen. That you have to pick a window. I think you shared PowerPoint rather than your browser.
Okay, can you see any error message now?
No, no, I'm just seeing your browser. I think you have to
Oh.
stop the share and then reshare it.
1 second. Oh, okay. Sure. 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 Nice. You see my desktop, okay.
Not
Right?
quite yet. Yeah. Okay, now I see your desktop.
Voila. This is the, can you see it now?
Yeah, I do. When
Yeah.
did Okay.
It says, sorry, I ran into an error while processing your request. Please try again or send reset to start over.
Let me just do one
You can do a
thing.
screenshot, yeah.
No, no, I've got it. And so basically, I'm just curious if like we could still reprint. So there's like contact IOM,
Mm-hmm.
and then we did nearest, right? Healthcare facility.
For assistance from the international organ.
Like, for example, when you're writing, I'm in Tunis, I need, for example,
Find the
because
nearest
people, they
healthcare.
know the names of the hospitals. I need Charles Nicolle Hospital. And this will need to search the Google Maps, like the localization of Charles Nicolle, which is not a GPS point that is from the CSV file. It can run an error like this, but after that, it provides you let's say the direction to the
Here are the nearest
requested
healthcare
hospital
facility.
in a specific name, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, if you could just share over, like, I'm not sure, like, I can't get this bug in particular to repro.
I will
But
I
yeah, so
will
if you've
stimulate
got
it
the
again
process,
many times. Yeah, I will
that would be great.
stimulate it again many times and do it one more time.
And then unfortunately, I just realized I do have a 10:15. But if you want to talk more, I'd be happy to do it. And then we can dive into, hey, how do we enable the Google search part as a fallback if you want to get into that. And then we'll
Sure,
take
sure.
forward the voice pieces as well.
Awesome. Okay,
Okay.
thank you so
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.